Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're looking at something, well, pretty fascinating in the car market. You know how new diesel cars seem to be fading away? Well, weirdly, the prices of some used diesel models are actually going up. It's a real paradox, isn't it? Especially with the whole industry moving in a different direction. So we're going to dive deep into this. We're looking at the used diesel car market, which is full of contradictions right now. We've been digging into an auto car article. It's called Price Hike for Used Diesels as New Car Supply Dries Up. And honestly, the reader comments on that piece were just as revealing. Some quite passionate views in there.
Yeah, definitely. So our goal here is to unpack this. Why are some diesels getting more valuable while others just as tank? What's really driving these trends? And importantly, what does it all mean for you if you're maybe looking to buy or even just curious about these market shifts?
It's a great topic because you're right. The big picture story for diesel has definitely been one of a decline for quite a while now. We've seen this clear move away from diesel, particularly in the new car sector. It's driven by, well, a mix of things. And that's the background everyone kind of knows, isn't it? The general feeling is diesel's on the way out. New car showrooms, you don't see many. It feels like all the talk is electric, hybrid, maybe some petrol.
That feeling is, yeah, backed up quite strongly by the numbers. If you look at just the first half of 2025, only about 58,722 new diesels were registered.
Wow.
And that's down 11.3% just compared to 2024. But this isn't sudden. This trend really goes back to about 2017. Dieselgate had a huge impact, plus ongoing worries about future taxes, emissions rules, that kind of thing.
Right.
It's gotten to the point where only a few manufacturers are really still in the diesel game. Audi, BMW, JLR. Especially with the Defender, that's still a key diesel model.
Okay, so that paints a clear picture for new cars. Supply is definitely shrinking, which leads straight to the big question. If fewer new ones are being made, what's happening in the used market? What does that mean for value? Because this is where it gets really interesting and frankly a bit weird. Despite everything we just said, the decline, the perception some specific used diesels are actually going up in price.
Exactly.
Yeah.
This is where the data from CAP HPI, they're a big vehicle valuation company. It really makes you go, huh. So get this. A 3-year-old diesel Honda HR-V, say with 60,000 miles.
Okay.
It's worth 11.3% more today than it was just a year ago.
11% more.
More. And it's not alone. An equivalent Mercedes CLS, up 8%. A Ford Mondeo, up 6.5%.
That's quite something. These aren't just tiny bumps.
No, definitely not. Especially in a market where you usually expect cars to lose value over time.
So the overall story is decline, but these specific models are bucking the trend. What on earth is going on there? Why these ones?
Well, Dylan Setterfield over at CAP HPI, he explains it pretty clearly. The key thing to grasp is that the used diesel market isn't just one single thing. It's almost like two separate markets operating at once.
Okay.
What we're seeing with these rising stars is basically a scarcity premium. There's still real demand for certain types of diesels, both from private buyers and from dealers stocking their lots.
Right. People who do a lot of miles, maybe.
Exactly. Fuel economy is still a massive factor for high-mileage drivers, and they want these specific, proven, economical models. But here's the kicker. Because fewer new diesels have been sold for years now,
Okay.
that means fewer of them are now entering the used market as 3- or 4-year-old cars. So you get reduced supply meeting this persistent niche demand. And basic economics says prices go up.
Classic supply and demand, but just for a very specific slice of the market. But wouldn't the general negative vibe around diesel, the environmental stuff, wouldn't that eventually pull even these desirable models down? It feels like a conflict.
That's precisely the tension, and it's why it's absolutely not a case of all diesels are going up. Far from it. While you have these few rising stars, you've got others that are dropping in value quite dramatically, like really wild drops.
Okay, so what's on the other side of the coin?
Well, take a 3-year-old SsangYong Corando 2.2 diesel, again with 60K miles. That's worth 24.5% less than a year ago.
Wow, nearly a quarter of its value gone in a year.
Yeah. Now, that specific case is linked to the uncertainty around the brand changing from SsangYong to KGM. That kind of confusion always hits values.
Understandable. Any others?
Oh, yes. An equivalent Vauxhall Astra diesel is down 20.2%. The data suggests Astras with higher than average mileage are getting hit particularly hard. And even a Range Rover Evoque diesel, down 12.7%. But that's explained differently, apparently. Used supply increased after an earlier shortage, so values are correcting.
Right, so specific reasons for specific models falling. But it creates this messy picture. These extremes must make it incredibly confusing if you're actually trying to buy or sell a used diesel right now. You can't just rely on the headlines. So, okay, we have these winners and losers at the extremes, but what about the vast majority of used diesels in the middle? Is the whole market just chaotic, or is there some stability underneath?
That's a good question. And actually, yes, for the bulk of the market, things are more stable than you might think from those headline figures. The average 3-year-old diesel is worth just 2.1% less than its equivalent was 12 months ago.
Only 2.1% less. Okay, that sounds much more normal.
Exactly. And compare that to petrol. The equivalent figure for a petrol car is 1.3% less. So diesel depreciation on average isn't wildly out of step with petrol at that 3-year mark.
Interesting.
And funnily enough, if you look at newer used cars, say 12 months old, with 20,000 miles, the positions actually flip. Diesel is worth 1.4% less year on year, while petrol is 1.6% less.
So very similar performance overall for the average car.
Pretty much. Philip Nothard from Cox Automotive confirms this sort of return to normality. He reminds us of the crazy post-COVID period. Remember when 2 to 4-year-old diesels were holding like 73% of their new price, and nearly new ones are at 98%?
Yeah, those were wild times for used car values.
Absolutely. Then in 2023, diesel values did fall faster than petrol for a bit as sentiment shifted. Tax changes came in favoring petrol and EVs.
Right.
But now, he says those 2 to 4-year-old diesels are settling around 51% of their original price. Petrols are around 58%, and EVs, well, they're lower, around 36%.
Okay, so things are stabilizing, but diesels are generally worth a bit less than equivalent petrols now.
Generally, yes. But here's a crucial statistic he points out. Because new diesel sales slumped so much back in 2023, there are only about 155,000 3-year-old diesels actually on the road now, which feeds right back into that scarcity point for the desirable models we talked about.
Got it. That low volume is key to understanding the price hikes for some.
Yeah.
So let's bring this down to the ground level. What does this look like for dealers trying to sell these cars? Are they actually struggling to find used diesels to stock?
Oh, absolutely. It's a real thing on the forecourts. Look at Motorpoint. They're a huge car supermarket group, right?
Yeah, massive stock usually.
Exactly. They normally have around 5,000 cars, mostly under 4 years old. But right now, out of those 5,000 cars, only about 350 are diesels or diesel hybrids.
350 out of 5,000. It's
Yeah.
tiny.
It really highlights the scarcity of nearly new diesels. You might find, say, a 2023 Audi A4 diesel for just under 23,000 pounds, or a 2022 Ford Kuga diesel for around 20,000 pounds. But the choice is limited.
So what did the dealers think is going to happen next?
Well, Mark Carpenter, he's the CEO at Motorpoint, he has an interesting perspective. He acknowledges demand is way down overall. But, he points out, because new diesel production is drying up, soon the only way to get a diesel will be to buy used.
Makes sense. So does he think prices will shoot up again then?
Actually, no. He doesn't expect a big price surge driven by future demand.
Oh, why not?
His reasoning is that the pool of available used diesels will just keep getting older. And older cars, naturally, are less appealing to people looking for that nearly new experience.
So the aging factor will counteract the scarcity factor over time.
That seems to be his prediction, yes.
Okay, this brings us nicely to the people actually driving these cars or thinking about them. The Autocar article had a comment section, and, well, people have opinions on diesel, don't they?
Oh, they certainly do. It's quite the mix, reflecting just how complex and sometimes emotional this topic is.
What kind of things were people saying?
Well, you had voices like Chris C. arguing strongly for modern diesels. They claimed using HVO, that's hydrotreated vegetable oil fuel, in a modern Euro 6 diesel makes it super clean, green, efficient, even pretty carbon
Still
neutral.
good, right?
Yeah, and they compared it favorably to an EV charged with electricity from fossil fuels, basically saying politicians are missing a trick by not supporting it more.
Okay, so a pro-modern diesel, pro-alternative fuel angle.
Exactly. But then, immediately, you get a counter-argument. Another commenter, XX, flatly rejected, calling diesel green and clean. They questioned the actual cleanliness of burning any diesel and pointed out that renewables made up over half of electricity generation last year, especially for overnight EV charging.
Right, the classic diesel versus EV environmental debate.
Precisely. Then you get a totally different take from someone called the Crankus. They were nostalgic for older diesels like late 90s, early 2000s models.
Before all the modern emissions tech.
Yes. Before DPFs, EGR valves, AdBlue, all that complexity. Their argument was those older engines were simple, super reliable, lasted forever. Whereas they argued modern diesels are just too complex, prone to expensive problems, especially for second or third owners. They called them throwaway disposables.
Wrong words.
Very. They blamed governments for pushing this complexity, saying it's actually ungreen because cars should last 20 years, but claimed few modern ones will make it to 10.
Interesting point about longevity versus complexity.
And they specifically took aim at Ford's awful EcoBoom wet belt engines, mentioning the high cost of changing those belts as a reason why you see cheap MK4 Focuses around.
Okay, so a real critique of modern engine design there.
But again, there's a counter. Another commenter, X, again, disagreed strongly that modern cars won't last. They argued that well-equipped, efficient modern cars, especially petrol ones, often do last 20 years. They even drew a comparison between an old MK2 Escort and a modern MK4 Focus to make their point.
So a direct rebuttal on the longevity claim.
Yeah.
And then you just get the raw emotion. One commenter, Jason Recliner, just put it very bluntly. Fuck diesel.
Right. Okay,
Yeah.
so no shortage of strong feelings then.
Not at all.
You've got the modern diesel is clean camp, the old diesel was better camp, the modern cars are fine camp, the anti-diesel camp. It really shows this isn't just about stats, is it? It's about personal experience, beliefs about technology, environmental views.
Absolutely. And that swirling mix of public sentiment, it definitely influences the market. It shapes who is still willing to buy a diesel, which affects demand for certain models. You know, the practical driver focused purely on MPG might ignore the noise and seek out that economical Mondeo, but someone else might be put off by the complexity fears or the environmental image, pushing them towards petrol or an EV, which in turn affects the resale value of other diesel models.
It's a constant feedback loop between the numbers and the narrative.
Precisely. The perception matters almost as much as the reality sometimes. Wow. Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here. From the shrinking new market to these surprising price hikes for some used models and the steep falls for others, the overall market stability, the dealer perspective, and this really passionate public debate. It's definitely a complex picture, this used diesel market. You've got scarcity driving up prices for some specific issues or just negative perception hitting others.
That's the key takeaway, I think. It's not one simple story. The market's far from monolithic. Yes, there's underlying stability for the average diesel car's value compared to petrol, but those price spikes, they're a direct result of new car production falling off a cliff years ago, meeting that persistent niche demand. And conversely, other models suffer from brand problems or supply corrections or just the general anti-diesel feeling. But the biggest single factor shaping all of this looking forward is just the simple fact that fewer and fewer new diesels are being made. That supply constraint is fundamental.
Which leaves us, and you listening, with a really interesting thought to ponder. We've heard these conflicting views on how long modern diesels will last, their real environmental impact. And we know the supply of genuinely nearly new ones is drying up. So how much longer can these specific, often older, used diesel models remain a genuinely smart buy for people looking for value and fuel economy? And maybe more profoundly, what's the true long-term cost, both financially and environmentally, of sticking with or buying into these aging diesel vehicles, especially as electric and hybrid options get better and potentially cheaper? Something to think about. We'll leave it there for this deep dive.